Okay, so it's off to College Park and Maryland this weekend after a pretty solid, good win against Minnesota. We finally were able to get a win over a Big Ten peer, Big Ten foe, who wasn't a cellar dweller, a bottom dweller. So that's good news for us. Gives us momentum heading into the last three games of the year. And the game coming up against Maryland is one that has a lot of people worried because of Minnesota's ability on offense to be explosive, something along the lines of like USC. But, you know, I have to say, look, Mike Locksley is all about the passing game and being able to move the ball, probably more suited to the Big 12 or Pac-12 than the Big Ten. Nonetheless, they don't run the ball that well, and USC does. Of course, UCLA had one of the worst rushing attacks in the country, and Garbers kind of looked like Troy Aikman against us, and they made some plays. But you know, with Tagliavoa gone, I don't think the big play ability on a consistent basis is there. Billy Edwards, don't want to sleep on him. They do have a productive passing game, but as Maryland is wont to do year in and year out, you can see Billy Edwards' production starting to slow down as the year goes on. You know, Maryland always looks like a playoff team in the first four games of the year and then winds up finishing weak. But so let's go over some stuff and see what we got going on here and see what our chances are. And I actually think we have some opportunities against Maryland. You know, the past 3 years hasn't been great. What have we been outscored? Like 119 to 40, something along those lines. And we won an OT game in the lockdown years, 27, 24. But Maryland doesn't have the balance on offense. Their passing game averages about 310, 12, 14 per game, depending on whose numbers you listen to. And that's actually 10th in the FBS and first in the Big Ten. But, you know, they do like to throw it a lot. That's something to be concerned about, considering how we haven't been able to pressure the quarterback, get interceptions, and give up big plays in the passing game and the running game on defense. Points per game. Maryland averages about, but here's the thing. They're kind of like Washington, where they move the ball a lot. You know, they gather these yards. But scoring 28 points per game is only 75th. So they're kind of middling average, maybe a little less. We average about 26. That's not far behind them. And that's 83rd. So that kind of all makes sense. Yards per game. They average over 400. That leaves them, like we were just saying, 48th in FBS, 6th in the Big Ten. You know, for us, we average about 380. That's 54th. It's kind of middling, but that's a big improvement over the past few years. Passing yards per game for us is 200. Like I said, about 310, 312, 314 for Maryland. That puts us about 80th. 80th first. But here's the big difference. And here is where we're going to have to make an impact, both offensively, to manage the pace of the game, and to force Maryland to become one-dimensional. It's rushing yards per game. We average about 175, 79, whosever numbers you listen to. And that leaves us about 54th, so that's pretty strong. Maryland only averages about 110 per game, and that's 111th and 15th in the Big Ten. We know what they want to do. The challenge for us is don't let a team that doesn't rush the ball very well, like UCLA, get big plays against you, and don't allow a one-dimensional team to be able to move the ball against you. You stop them on first or second down, and then they're throwing, a wheel route or a screen pass, guy's wide open, breaks a big play. And the plays that they do make in the passing game have now put you behind the 8 ball. We can let Edwards have some pass completions, sort of like Will Rogers at Washington, but manage the pace of the game and do what we need to do. They protect him pretty well. He's only given up 16 sacks. Maryland's only given up 16 sacks. We've only given up 15. Both teams do a pretty good job at protecting their quarterback. So we're going to have to, when we play that bend but not break, a lot of zone kind of defense, we can't let him just sit back there and pick us apart. We can't let that happen. If he gets his 280 yards, okay, fine. But as long as at the end of the game on the scoreboard we're ahead, that's all that matters. When it comes to strength of schedule versus point differential, they're 70th. We're about 60th. So we do a little better in that category, even though their strength of schedule is 21st and ours is about 39th. But Maryland, they had the one big 1-point win against USC, 29, 28, 28, 27, whatever it was. But other than that, they have not had any wins that you could point. Virginia, they lost to Michigan State, got pounded by Minnesota. I mean, there were some games in there where they just didn't show up. Your best win now, and we would have taken a win against USC, but their best win is against the 4-5 USC and a Virginia team. So even though Maryland has been a daunting task for us to compete against during the Tagliavoa years, I think that if we look at this in the way that we kind of looked at and managed Washington and Will Rogers, we have an opportunity for success. We should have had more success against UCLA and Garbers. We were just not ready for that game. So I'm not as worried as some other people, but, big win. Now you're going on the road. Your availability report, we don't know what's up with that just yet. Coach just said Tyreem's about 85%, even though he was on the field and made some plays. A lot of guys still not dinged up, and if you're not at a full strength, 100%, against a productive passing attack, that can create some problems. So let's go through some stats. Billy Edwards, 66%, 2,520 yards, 14 touchdowns, 8 interceptions. Not too daunting. Interception percentage is about 2.2. You look at Athan, 148 for 275, just under 54%. And 12 touchdowns, 6 interceptions. But if you account, I did some math on Athan and dropped passes. If you count the drops, depending on which ones you think were absolutely on the receiver, which ones were absolutely catchable, he'd be in the 60 to 63% range. So although Maryland has a proficient passing game, their edge isn't necessarily that far ahead of us. If you look at Brosmer, I think his percentage also is around 67, 68%. Billy Edwards, 66%. So, it's a manageable kind of game. It's not something you have to pull your hair out and go, oh my God, we have to worry about Maryland and Billy Edwards. Our rushing attack, 173 yards per game, 4.5 yards per rush. Maryland, their top guy is Roman Hemby. Has about 437 yards, averages 4.5 per carry, has 5 touchdowns. Catches the ball out of the backfield a little bit, which we tend to see on a weekly basis now. We had a wide open, the running back for Minnesota Major, wide open screen pass for a touchdown in the third quarter to finish that opening drive. So just be aware of running backs catching the ball out of the backfield against a team that likes to throw it. And then Nolan Ray is their number 2 back, 60 rushes, 268 yards. He also averages about 4.5 yards per carry, 2 touchdowns. So it's a running game that's manageable, kind of similar to Nebraska, actually, in that way. Coach was talking about their receivers today, but, Taj Felton, 80 catches already. That's unbelievable. 80 catches. He averages about a little over 12 yards per catch, 979 yards, 6 TDs. Caden Prather, 47 catches, 503 yards, just under 11 yards per carry, and 3 touchdowns. Of course, we have Daimir, our leading catcher, our pass receiver, 42 catches, 538 yards, 12.8 per catch, 3 touchdowns, and uncharacteristically 3 drops last week. He can't do that this week. I'm sure he's not really happy about that, but if he can make some plays against the Maryland defense, which is absolutely, positively, Maryland has, their defense has been beaten up a little bit this year when it comes to running up the score. So there's opportunities there. Nonetheless, and then we got Ian. He has 20 catches, 356 yards. He's the big play guy, almost 18 yards per catch, 2 touchdowns. Kenny Fletcher and Ian Strong have the same amount of catches, 20 each. That's mind-boggling to me. Nonetheless, that it looks like we need to get KJ Duff more involved there. He can make some plays. He should become a little more of the offense. Not to mention Christian Dremel when he caught a 17-yard completion early in the game last week. I kind of feel it's not just about him catching the ball, but you now have confidence in your passing game where a guy that can catch the ball, almost never drops it, and kind of instills confidence in the receiving core. Of course, we had some drops last week, so that didn't really work out that way. But nonetheless, maybe Dremel get some more opportunities, more targets. I'm not sure what's up with Chris Long and Ben Black. Is he not getting as many looks because of his propensity to drop the ball? We don't know what's going on with that. So there we have sort of an offensive compare and contrast. Now, defensively, we give up 24 points a game. That's 66th in the country. Maryland's points per game is 28. So some people would think that this has the potential to be a shootout. I don't really see it. I think Maryland's kind of one-dimensional. We're not that kind of running up, score 35, 40 points kind of team, unless it's Howard or Akron or Wagner. So, I think this could be like that 28-24, 28-27 kind of game, maybe 30-27, something like that. Nonetheless, defensively, we all know and have talked about ad nauseum our inability to get the pressure, get sacks, get the quarterback on the ground, get an interception. Here's what kind of surprised me. We have 15 sacks for the year. That's less than 2 per game. Maryland only has 11. And this is coming from a team in the past few years. In addition to Tagliavoa, having his way with us, their front was always pretty active. They were pretty good up front. So I think Athan is going to have some time. And, once again, Kirk Sharrock is going to have to be on his game. I think if we display some balance, we can be aggressive throwing the ball like we were the first. Athan was great the first half against Minnesota. But if we can work in the running game, not sure if Kyle is going to be back. Of course, we hope that he is because he's the kind of guy that can keep your team from getting the ball, and he can get the tough yards and the chunk yards. So that would be a huge help. Interceptions, we only have 5 on the year. And my guess is Billy Edwards is going to drop back a lot. We have to come up with a player on defense. We had a couple big plays against Minnesota, and that Tyrene Powell play kind of changed the trajectory and the outcome of the game. We're going to need something like that. We can't let him sit back there. We have to make something happen. Strip sack, interception. He's not immune from, he only has 8 interceptions, but, he only has 14 touchdowns, too. His numbers aren't that dissimilar from Athan's. Tackle for loss. This is something that we've also kind of struggled with a little bit. We have 37.5. But Maryland, despite their front four having been good the past several years, they have 42. So, not sure, if Jay Sean's going to get carries or Antoine Raymond, or who's going to be the guy behind Kyle if he's back. But if we can avoid tackles for loss and have that balanced offense and be able to run it and throw it when we need to effectively and efficiently, that's going to be opportunities for us. Again, can I see us beating a Big Ten foe and peer? Maryland's a peer program. No, they've had their way with us the past few years. Can we beat them like we did just beat Minnesota? I absolutely believe that, but we can't all of a sudden think our defense is back and that all of a sudden we're going to start shutting everybody down. We're going to have to be on our P's and Q's on defense. If Billy Edwards is going to make some plays, that's okay. But, let's not forget, Minnesota destroyed Maryland. They barely eked out a win over Virginia. They get beat by Michigan State, who's not that great in offense. So Robert Longerbeam, he had a few breakups against Minnesota. If he can make some plays and we continue to be more active in the secondary and the defensive front, we have some opportunities. And, as we go around the conference this week, just a quick preview of the Big Ten this week. There aren't really any big games. We're now 5-4. I absolutely, if we can get to 6-4 next week at Maryland, I think this bodes pretty well for us because now we're establishing a pattern of being able to match up with our peers. We get to a bowl game. Maybe there isn't pressure to play guys that are really danged and really banged up. But depending on how some of these Big Ten games shake out this week, this might leave us in a pretty good position if we can sort of pick up the momentum where in the past we haven't. Some other teams fall off. This week, number one, Oregon plays Wisconsin. Shouldn't be a very close game. Oregon is number one in the country. 14-point favorite over Wisconsin, coming off a loss to Iowa, 42-10, who's coming off a loss to UCLA. Go figure. So in a sort of middling conference, once you get below the top three teams, there's opportunities for us to move up the ranks. We're 2-4? 2-4 in the conference right now? I'm not sure off the top of my head. Number 2, Ohio State, 20.5 point favorites over Northwestern, who surprisingly is 4-5. They beat Purdue, who's struggling. They're 1-8. Beat them 26-20. Ohio State beat Purdue last week 45-0. Number 6, Penn State. They are 28.5 point favorite over Purdue. They beat Washington 35-6. I'm kind of surprised Washington really wasn't in that game at all. But, Penn State should come away with a win there. Purdue most likely going to go to 1-9 as a 28.5 point underdog. A game that's probably going to might be the best game as far as being a tightly contested Big Ten game, and that's 6-3 Illinois versus Michigan State. Illinois is a 3-point favorite. Illinois' last loss was to Oregon, 38-9. Michigan State lost to, they got blown out. I was surprised that it was a 47-10, whatever it was. So, if Illinois, Michigan State quite capable of pulling out a 24-21, 2017 kind of win. Illinois drops to 6-4. I think Michigan State, what would they be? Like 4-5, 5-5 maybe? I'm not sure. But there's a tightening of the middle class in the Big Ten. So it'll be some opportunities for us if we can go on the run to be just below the the top of the heap in the conference. And then we have Washington as a 3.5-point favorite over UCLA. Now, Washington's 5-5. They last lost to Penn State 35-6. And, of course, UCLA has won 3 in a row over Rutgers, Nebraska, and surprisingly, Iowa. They beat Iowa 20-17. They're 4-5. So at the end of this game, one team's going to be 5-5, another team's going to be 5-6, and so you have a lot of middling kind of teams. Not the dominant kind of Big Ten conference that we would have thought. Nonetheless, opportunities for Rutgers to move up. I'm not as worried about Maryland as some. Availability report, especially on defense, will be really important, and how well we do against Maryland. If we can carry that momentum, carry the healing process of getting better, feeling better from some of the bumps and bruises that we've had, and kind of let Maryland be one-dimensional. Let Edwards get us 270, 280 yards as long as we show some balance, can get the ball. We were 4 or 5 in the red zone. Should have been 5 for 5. That interception shouldn't have been called an interception at 8th and through into the end zone. The defender's foot was clearly out of bounds. Nonetheless, finish drives, have some balance. If Kyle is back, I'm feeling good. This will be a competitive game, and it won't be a 42-24 loss or that embarrassing 37-0 loss a couple years ago. That was just like the worst loss ever. And I think we get to 6-4. This could be a better than expected ending to the season. Let's see how this shakes out. And then I'll be watching the availability report. And everybody enjoy the rest of your weekend. We will see you the next time.